All right.
And it's going to the cloud. There we go. So we are now recording. All right. I'm going to go ahead. I should be able to mute everyone. Give me 1 second. Mute all. Okay, so I just muted everyone. Sorry about that, but it helps keep things. I wasn't the host the last time right away, and it definitely made for some interesting things, interesting conversations that were happening in the background while we were getting started in there. So I do want to get started. If you were in the last session, thank you for attending that one. We're going to get into some more advanced church marketing strategies and tactics during this session. So assuming that you can all see the presentation, I'm going to jump into our agenda. So I'm going to introduce myself again. For those of you who were not in the last session, you'll be able to get to know me. We're going to look at a short glossary, a shorter glossary than in the last session. We're going to talk about audience targeting on different platforms. And so we're going to get into some Facebook audience targeting. We're going to get into some Google audience targeting. We're going to look at some various things. And then we're going to talk about content writing for various formats. So emails, social media, and even ads on social media. And then content strategies and goals for that content. We're going to talk about that as well. And then we'll get into a time of Q&A. There's a little less to go over in this because we're going to be spending more time on each thing. But I also do want to be respectful of your time today. Of course, we got out of the last session with like a minute to spare because there were a few questions. There are going to be, I don't know if I have anything to share after this one in terms of like content or documents, but the presentation will be available after the fact, as will the recording, of course, will be, I believe they said Tuesday. All the recordings will be available on the epaumc.org website. So you'll probably get an email about that too. When that happens. So that's that. Let me tell you a little bit about me so you know who I am. You can just call me Kevin. There are people who will call me Reverend, which I run for the hills when I hear Reverend. But Pastor Kevin is fine, but I prefer just Kevin. Just so you know, I am the associate pastor and director of online ministries at Hempfield United Methodist Church. I've been a licensed local pastor within the UMC for about the last 4 years. With the I'm still in my licensing process, taking all the fun classes, but I served previously for 3 years as the head pastor at Burdenham United Methodist in lovely Burdenham, Pennsylvania, out in the country. Great spot. But my time before and even currently, really part time, I work in marketing outside of the church. So kind of guess what gives me like some unique insight into handling church communication. Uh, in my previous lives of working in marketing, I used to be with a company called Alexio that was located in Elizabethtown, Pennsylvania. They were purchased by a company called Ministry Brands, which owns like 90% of the church software industry. And so one of the tasks that I had there was optimizing, at the time, 28 different websites. It is now like 35 or 37 different brands that they own. So if you're familiar with like Shelby or Easy Tithe or let's see, Church Office Online or Alexia, like all of those companies are owned by the same parent company, which is Ministry Brands. So there are, I got to work a lot on how to optimize websites in that space. So I've spent a lot of time on websites, a lot of time on content, a lot of time on creating ads. So if you see ads on Facebook, well, it might be one that I created, and I'm sorry about that, but that's just who I am and what I do. So that's yeah. And I always have fun with the little, totally looks like, and I love that hat. So I did the Yukon Cornelius picture. It's of course Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, one of my favorite Christmas movies of all time. Let's get into the glossary. So audience targeting. This term is in reference to using geographic information, demographic information, and other interest info that has been gathered by various platforms to be able to target users based on demographics, their geography, or even interest. And we can use that information to create audiences from our websites, on social media platforms when we're advertising, as well as even segmenting our emails in an email platform like MailChimp or Constant Contact. Like we can take that and create audience segments inside of there. So for example, no church, for example, has 100% membership of everybody that attends. You probably have people that are not members. Uh, I would venture to guess that at some point you've got to send an email to one or the other. Your church members may not be interested in a new members class, right? So if you have people that attend but aren't members, being able to segment that audience to be able to say, hey, we have this class coming up and they're not members. Well, you don't want to send that email to everybody. That's where audience targeting can come in on various platforms. Social media marketing, SMM for short, but this is using the ads portion of any given social media platform to promote content events or run other campaigns. You can even run a like campaign. If you got a new page for your church, if you didn't have one before, you can actually create a campaign just to get people to like the page. And it's wild to me that it happens. It's funny. One of the campaigns I'm running right now for a client, they're a logistics company. They're looking for drivers for their trucking company. And I'm getting more page likes than I am applicants. But I kind of expected that. But I wasn't really I was expecting not to get as many like a megaton of applicants because they're regional. But I was surprised how many page likes I was getting as a result of the campaign. Content marketing, this, like I mentioned in the last session, if you were there, this involves the creation of content, either for for sharing online. So this could be videos, this could be blog posts, this could be social media posts. If you're creating content, you have the ability to market that content, and that is always done with a goal in mind. Like you're doing this with a strategy. You want to get people to do something, take some kind of action. It can't just be come to church and get to know Jesus, right? Like those are our ultimate goal, but that goal to get them through the door might be to register for a class or come see a concert or attend a special event. And then, as I mentioned in the last session, rights managed versus royalty free. This is super important for churches, super important for anyone really, but churches, we want to be above reproach when it comes to copyright law, trademark law. So making sure that we're doing stuff that we're using sources like videos, images, music that is royalty free, that we've paid for, or if they don't require payment, they might ask for attribution, like image by so-and-so. They might ask for attribution in the use of it. There are other sources where, and we'll get into those, where they're completely free platforms where no attribution is required, but you can just go in and download an image. So to use for a social media post, for an email on your website. In fact, the Easter image that we have on our website right now for the church for our Easter Sunday services is from one of those free websites, websites with free image, royalty-free images, where I didn't even have to attribute that to the person who created it, but it's a beautiful illustration. And it was like, hey, it's free, like I could go get it, but I had to go. Knowing the sources of where to go is excellent for that kind of stuff. But also being above board, like you don't want to be that, you don't want to be the one that goes out and grabs an image off of Shutterstock, has the Shutterstock watermark on it, and puts that into a thing, because that will 100% come back to haunt you, because they go searching for websites that use their images inappropriately or without permission. So you will get an email. Also around that, if you're the person who receives contact through your website, know that there are scammers that will attempt to get you to click on links and whatnot by contacting you through your website to tell you that, how dare you use this image that I created on your website. It is 100% a scam. Do not click on the link. Don't even bother replying. It's and because 9 times out of 10 it's like this legal threat, like, oh, I'm going to call my lawyer and blah blah blah. It's a scam. I get about 2 or 3 of them a month on one of the websites that I run. So let's jump right into it. Talk about audience targeting. So getting your audience right is critical, especially when we're communicating things about churches. Different age groups, of course, use different platforms. So we want to make sure that we're adjusting our message to speak to particular age groups, people from certain geographies. Like, for example, if I were to create an ad for people to, from, say, the Lancaster area to go to a place in Philadelphia, I don't want to provide directions from New Jersey, right? So making sure that my content is customized to the audience that I'm giving that information to is super important. It makes it feel more personal. I'm more likely to take action as a result of the fact that it's customized to me. It's going to make more sense to them. And so if you've got posts, if you've got platforms, if you've got content that's going to span multiple generations, creating different versions of it or creating a different version for different platforms is going to be important. And I'm going to get into some of the details about what those content modifications may look like per platform. So we're going to talk like, what's the best content like for a post on Facebook versus an ad on Facebook versus the same on Instagram. We're going to go into some of that. So shaping that message for your audience is super important. And while it does create extra work, it makes your communication work better. So there's a reason that this is in the advanced version of this class. So we're going to take a look at some examples right now for audience targeting on Facebook. So I am going to pull up here in a second. Once I move that out of the way, I am going to pull up an ad campaign that I'm working on right now for a client. I asked permission to share this, so I'm not sharing any trade or company secrets here, but it's a recruiting campaign. Give me 1 second to share this. It is a recruiting campaign to hire truck drivers. So you should be able to see this now, right? Because it is a recruiting campaign, I am limited to some of my audience targeting demographics because they have anti-discriminatory practices on Facebook, for example, if you're recruiting or if you're running ads for a bank. I've done that as well. Financial institutions, basically they disable some of the audience targeting options like gender, age, etc. You don't have access to those. However, you do have access to those through in a regular campaign. But we can take a look at some of these right now, at least for what this is. So when you go into Facebook, of course, you've got your campaign level, you've got your ad set level, and you've got your individual ads, right? So it's broken out into these three categories. At the campaign level, you're setting your overarching, what is it? What do I want to do? Where is it going to go piece, right? So, there's that. When you get into the ad sets themselves inside of the campaign, that's where I can create now various ad sets that speak to different people. So, for example, you'll notice that I've got this one here that says OTR, 10th Street, and lookalike. And we'll get into some of that detail. But then I've got this other one that just says OTR. And if we look at this, so if I jump into this ad set and edit it, what we're going to see here from a targeting perspective is that I've got some audience interest area. I've got a region set up where these ads are going to be displayed. So this, from a Facebook perspective, as far as targeting is concerned, when you're establishing these audiences, you can set up a tight geographic radius. So you can do a 1 mile circle around a specific point, like your church. You can go bigger. You can go by zip code. You can go by county. So depending on how you want to target geographically, you have that option. As I mentioned, there are certain targeting options that are disabled in a recruiting campaign, but you can set specific age groups as low as 13, as high as 65 plus. Say, for example, if I wanted to set up an ad set inside a campaign, let's say I've got an ad for an event that I'm going to be hosting at the church. In fact, I can pull up one of my old ad accounts. Well, actually, this is for the church here. I believe I just changed the name on it. Here we go. Yeah. Ad blocker. But let's say I've got, one of these campaigns here for a trunk or treat that we do at the church. I want to be able to get this in front of the kids as much as I want to be able to get this in front of the parents. So for my targeting, I might set my ads for the kids to be, inside their age group. I haven't in this case, but I would say perhaps target ages 13 to 18. But I'd only run the ads on Instagram as opposed to running the ads on Facebook, because that age group is more apt to be on Instagram. Now, Facebook allows you to advertise on both. So, and choose which platform you want to advertise on. So you don't have to advertise just on Facebook or on Facebook and Instagram. You can actually choose where you want the ad to be placed. So when you get into placements here, you can choose what platform you want these to show up in. So if I want it to show up in the Instagram feed, but not Facebook, I can do that. If I want it to show up inside of Instagram stories, I can do that. And so I can tailor the ad literally where it shows up, as well as who's going to see it. And I can customize that ad content to a specific age group. And so that's where some of this targeting comes into play. The other thing that you can do here is, these are targeting options that weren't available in the other campaign, of course. I can adjust the ads. And in fact, I thought so. I actually renamed this account from Burdenhand to Hempfield. You can see that I had the location 10-mile radius around 2620 Old Philadelphia Pike, Burdenhand, PA. That was the church address of Burdenhand where I used to serve. The people who I matched that ad to were parents, new parents, parents with toddlers. And you can see that I did not. So they had to be somebody who was flagged as a parent in Facebook. This did not show up really for grandparents. It did not show up for folks who were, didn't have kids. This was geared towards specifically people with children, because I was going to have a bounce house. We had carnival games. We had, free food. Yeah, stuff for kids. It was a trunk or treat. Come in costume. It was a chance for me to get to meet everybody in the community. And then certainly I went after interest areas too. So like you can narrow the audience down based on interest areas, age, and certain demographic things like whether or not they're a parent. And then, of course, you can control what platforms they show up on. In this case, I was going after the parents. So I was primarily going to Facebook, because at the time that I was doing this was 5 years ago. At the time that I was running this ad, 3.5 years ago, the time I was running this ad, that age group would have been more apt to be on Facebook rather than Instagram. So I was running it primarily on Facebook. And I had, over here, you get an idea of how many people you're going to reach inside that radius based on those interest areas, and how many event responses you can expect per day, right? And that's how the Facebook targeting tools work. So you can really dial in who you're going to be speaking to. And this comes back to that component of, making sure that you are speaking to the people that you want to speak to, and that you're shaping that message to them, and that you're targeting them specifically. So we'll, and just so you know, there is a Q&A session at the end. If you have questions, please write them down. We'll get to the Q&A at the end. I found it, and I said this in the first session, but I found in the past, if I try and tackle questions during the presentation, we run out of time and I don't get a chance to go through everything. So we'll do Q&A at the end. So it's similar to what we can do inside of email. If you're using a platform like MailChimp or Constant Contact, you have the ability to segment your audience inside of the email system. So what you want to be doing is creating segments. If you don't have them, you can add them. But you can create user segments based on various information. So if they live in certain areas, if they're certain ages, if they're apt to be members of certain groups within the church, these are all things that you can use to help segment your data. Like, for example, inside of MailChimp, if they participate in the Tuesday night women's Bible study and the Thursday morning adult Bible study, then I will have tags on their entry in the system that says they attend those two groups. That is all actually driven out of my church management system, out of Planning Center, that I have a classes section that sends tag information over to MailChimp so that I can see that. And then if I want to create an email that I know that the building's going to be closed on Tuesday night for like sprinkler inspection or something. Literally had somebody come through my office and check smoke detectors yesterday. You can actually say, hey, the building's going to be closed. I can just email that group and not have to sit there and guess who's part of it. I know that they're part of it because inside the system, we've got a tag there, and I have people that manage those fields within the church. I can send an email confidently to a specific segment of my audience and say, hey, Tuesday night, that class will be virtual. Here's the Zoom information for it because the building will be closed, right? Very customized email. And then the other thing I do is inside of there, and in fact, let's go ahead and pull up MailChimp. Because I do quite a bit of this with our youth. Now, while we have multiple users that are in here, I don't have to worry about, let me go to campaigns. Inside of campaigns, like we've got quite a few segments in here. So for example, these are emails that I've created. It's been a while since I've done them. So we're looking at some older ones here, but like confirmation, right? I've got, we did a confirmation trip where last year before COVID hit, this was, before and after COVID hit, actually, I had multiple confirmation emails that went out so that, I was targeting just the segment of my congregation, which I've got 2,500 people in my planning center, but I had 23 students in my confirmation class. I didn't need to send those emails to 2,500 people. So I used my confirmation class segment to send just to those 23 families so that they were getting the information. This was about trips. We gave all the students Holman Christian Standard Study Bible as a gift for going through confirmation. We had to coordinate the delivery of those Bibles as well as their confirmation certificates after the fact. So like we customized those emails. Additionally, when you go into the email, we had first names that populated dynamically into those emails so that it was personalized even more. And that's based on the information that's in the contact database within MailChimp. When you have personalization in an email, whether it's in the subject line as well as in the body of the email, like you're using somebody's name, you're referring to something about them, it actually makes them more likely to engage with the email, open it, read it, interact with it. So that level of personalization and customizing the messaging is actually really important. So that's just an example of how we would want to use this. For example, you wouldn't want to send an invite for a new member class to a bunch of people who've been members of the church for 20 plus years. That's going to seem disconnected and out of place. And, there are going to be people who don't appreciate it, right? They're going to be like, well, I've been a member. You're always going to have one, right? You're going to have one that's going to email you back and be like, why am I getting this? I have, there's a club that I'm a member of where I handle all the communication and the website and everything for, and literally I should have been segmenting. There's membership dues and I handle all that stuff. And I sent out reminders about paying dues. I should have been and didn't. Ready? Right? I'm admitting a mistake here. I did not exclude people that had already paid their dues, and I was sending out payment reminders and dues reminders to everyone. Now, in my communication, I said, if you've already paid your dues, this does not apply to you. Please disregard. That did not stop my angry people from emailing me and saying, I've already paid my dues. I don't want to get these emails. Like, okay. And, it's the same people that say they didn't hear about it, even though they've heard about it 20 times, because we had it in the bulletin and on the screen and on the website and sent out emails. And we had a poster on the bulletin board in the church, and it was, announced from the front by the pastor. We can do all that. They will still not have heard about it, and nobody will have told them. And there will never be any way to make them happy. We know that we know that they exist. So anyway, making our emails work better. Let's take a look at some of the things that will help with email communication. So we talked about how to customize it. Here's how to make sure that it's deliverable and people will take action. So there are some configuration things that need to be done with email to make sure that it's going to work properly. All of these systems, MailChimp, Constant Contact, Sendinblue, MyEmma, regardless of what platform you're using, they need to be configured correctly. You have to verify your domain. So in our case, we use MailChimp. I've gone in, I've got domain name service records created for MailChimp. I've done the domain verification with them. This is internet-y stuff that you will maybe need to ask somebody to help with, and that's okay. They have some pretty good tutorials on how to do this. They can actually automate some of this for you in those tools if you have access to the domain for your church and your email. They can automate a lot of this. However, they may not be able to automate it, and you might have to go in and do some of this manually. So knowing that these configuration pieces here can actually prevent email from being sendable, or it may even go into spam, making sure that this is done. And that is to say that everything's configured correctly. Very important, regardless of what system you're using. For example, we use Gmail for all of our email here at the church. Anybody who works on staff gets a hempfieldumc.org email address, but we use G Suite. We want to make sure that our emails are deliverable. So there's quite a bit of configuration that goes on behind the scenes to make sure that those emails don't ever go to spam if I email somebody personally. Well, we want to do the same thing with our email platforms like MailChimp or Constant Contact, and that's how you do it. Beyond that, content writing, we want to make sure that we have a catchy but not spammy subject line, right? I'll admit, there's a communication people have a tendency every once in a while to phone it in. And by that, I mean, like, if we're sending out a weekly or a monthly newsletter, sometimes that subject line is a little boring because it's a regular communication. And it might be something as simple as weekly or monthly newsletter. And it doesn't have anything really super interesting in it. Well, the way we get around that is by creating a name for the newsletter, or saying, we can personalize the subject line. We can say first name, right, as a variable. It'll pull that out of the database. Check out the latest news from, Hempfield UMC in our weekly update. And that's the subject line. I promise you, I will get way more opens on that second subject line than I will out of weekly update or weekly newsletter, because it's catchier, it's personal, it's something that's going to be more direct and straight to the person. The other thing that we want to do is make sure that our emails are short, that it's direct content that gets straight to the point. I mentioned this in the last session too, but it stands to reason that we're going to talk about this a bit more here. Email content should be direct and to the point. People don't like to read novels on their emails. Why? Because 87% of all emails now are opened on a mobile device. How much do you love it when you get a mile-long email on your phone? How much of it do you actually read? My guess is probably about the first paragraph before you hit the back button and go out and see what the other email was. And so what you want to do is make sure that the content is dynamic, that it's catchy, but that no section is more than like a single paragraph with maybe 25 words, right? It's got to be direct to the point and give them something to take action on. So if it's about an event, give them the button quickly that says register for the event. If it's something where they need to learn more about it, give them the button that says learn more, get info, get tickets, apply now, right? You always want to use language that is now, get, take, free. Like those calls to action are very, very strong, and people tend to take action on them. They tend to click more often than not. The other thing here is that email, unless it's just a special announcement, email is not your full content delivery system. Email is a simple communication that shuttles somebody from one place to the next. If you have something that you're trying to communicate with them that's longer, don't do it in the email. Give them the headline, give them a little bit of info, give them a button, and take them over to your website, which should be the primary location where you're trying to communicate that information. 100% is where you should be trying to run that from. You want to take them to your website. And then if there's more for them to do there, like register for a thing or fill out a form, great, get them to do that. But the strong call to action, having it, be as simple as possible, and then personalize the email dynamically if possible. And that is to say, add their name as a variable. So like in MailChimp, you get this little kind of symbolized thing that says like F name as in first name. And you can put F name variable and then comma, and it will, when it sends the email, automatically populate the first name of the person that's in your database into that field. It looks like it's been personally written to them. It's more likely to get their engagement because it's been written directly to them, even though it hasn't. The other thing that you have the option to do in systems like MailChimp and Constant Contact is actually build dynamic content. If I wanted to go to this level of work, which I don't, but it's possible, right? You can customize something like a newsletter to the people who are receiving it, and have different newsletter content based on tags or segmentation that you have in your email database. So if there are people that attend the Wednesday night pastor's Bible study, but they don't attend the other studies, or they've got a student, I can swap out a block of content dynamically and have it be student information for a student thing coming up, rather than for the seniors adult ministry that meets on Thursday mornings. Because I want that newsletter to be content appropriate for the person receiving it. So you can do that kind of stuff dynamically in these systems, but send one email instead of 6. So there are some advanced configurations that you can do inside of these. Now, a lot of that functionality, sometimes you have to pay to get to. MailChimp by default is free, but if you want to use some of these more advanced features, you might have to pay $14.99 a month, right, to get at some of them. So it is possible to get to there, but dynamic content can make the content way more engaging and be more inspiring to get people to click through. If we're looking at some content examples here, basically, what are key elements? Talked about the configuration, talked about the subject line. Making the email about them and what they can or need to do is very important. Here's how you can engage with what's happening at the church. Not, here's what's happening at the church. This is how you can become part of what's happening at the church. It's a lot more invitational. And being invitational is a core concept of Christianity, amen? Like, we want to make sure that we're inviting people in. I was actually at our men's group the other night. We were doing a campfire out here behind the church, men's group. And we were talking about this. We were talking about the passage from, I believe it's John chapter 4. Jesus meets a Samaritan woman at the well. I think it was John 4. And, we're talking about that. We're talking about other people, rich young rulers, like some various interactions that Jesus has, even with like Simon Peter. And he never starts out with like just slamming them with, hey, come follow me, or, here's this thing. There's always an invitation to learn more, right? So we kind of want to treat our communications like that too. We want to be invitational. We want to get people to want to learn more. With the woman at the well, it was like, a little bit of a prophetic word about what had been going on in her life. With Simon Peter, it was the revelation of that great catch, right? He had just had a rough night of no fish, and they're on the shoreline, and Jesus is like, dude, just toss the net in right there. And of course, then the nets are bursting. And we've got these great examples of how Jesus does something catchy. Sorry, bad dad joke. But, we've got these examples of how Jesus does something special to get their attention. We can be doing the same thing with our communication. The biggest thing is we personalize the message. We make it about them and how they can interact. Please, please, please do not only send an image. There's a reason I have that in bold and underlined in all caps. Like, you do not send just an image. That will 100% get flagged as spam almost all the time. I have people that will send me a newsletter where it's just an image, or it's like literally an image, and all the text and everything is in it. And I have to sit there. I have to click the thing to download the image. And then I have to sit there and I can't zoom it in because then it gets blurry. It's like, no, spend the time, do text. Not only do text, but then also be sure to include images in there so that it's visual. There's this example over here on the right. This example over here on the right shows, here's a nice little image up at the top. That's all the image that's in there. That's it. It's an eye-catching image. It's personalized. Here's what you can do. This is about you. We're celebrating. Here's what you can get. And then here's the call to action. Now, granted, this is a sales email, right? But this can also stand to what kind of communications you can be sending out on behalf of the church. I showed the examples of the confirmation stuff. When I wanted to invite students to sign up for confirmation, this is very similar to what I sent to the families. I had an image of students doing stuff at the church. It was an image from our youth group. I had a message to the parent. It was dear first name. We're starting confirmation. Our records show that, your son, your daughter, whatever, is of age and may be interested in taking confirmation. If you'd like to have them in confirmation class, and I'm just paraphrasing, I don't remember the exact wording that I used, but it was just register them here. And they went in, they filled out a form. When it was time, if they needed to do baptisms, I sent out an email if they had to do baptisms as part of their thing. And then I had them go and fill out a form on the website and here's what I'm saying, right? I'm taking them over to the website every time to do a thing. So I'm getting that interaction from them, and it's personalized. And then I get their students' info, age, all their information. I update all my records in my people management software, right? So now I've got updated information on all the kids. And then I know when they're going to be baptized because then I schedule that. right? So I can use all of this information to power so many things inside of the ministry of the church, but it's just about making sure that I'm doing it in such a way that it's inviting them to come do it. And then you want to keep, like I said before, short, direct content, strong call to action. The buttons are great. Buttons are super awesome. And then you want to use images properly. You don't want to just have it be text. Text is super boring. If you get a text email, I never want to read that. I don't know about you. Having the picture makes it a little more interesting. And then you always want to test to make sure it looks good on a mobile device. And they have tools built into the system to help you see how it's going to look on mobile. Because emails use the same technology as web pages, is effectively behind the scenes as far as like how they're built, it's possible that it might look great on the desktop version, but when you go into mobile, that image that shows up on the left might actually be under the text instead of above it on a mobile device. And you wanted that image to be above that. It makes it more interesting. There's an image there that I go, oh, that's cool. And then I scroll down to learn more. So testing for mobile is super important as well. And like I said, the platforms have the tools for that built in. Let's talk about social media content. Now, once again, this presentation will be available. The file for this will be available after the fact. All of this information is also available through Google, just saying. So while we'll have this conversation and we'll answer questions at the end, you'll have this, and you've also got Google. So if you need to know what the best ways to do social media are, there are some great sources out there. There's whole websites that I use as resources for this kind of information. So anyway, I've just compiled some of the top, since we're talking about these platforms, let's talk about them. So Facebook, for example, a regular post should be 40 to 80 characters in length. There are online tools for character counts, and this is why this is important. Facebook will shrink your post once you get past a certain point of characters, where it's going to say, see more or read more, and you have to click it to expose the rest, right? You don't actually want that whole post to be hidden, or any of that post. If you have a link there that you want people to click, you want that to be visible and not have that be hidden. So what you do is you make sure that you have the right amount of characters. And in this case, posts with 40 to 80 characters in length, they don't get consolidated. They don't get shortened. 80 characters or less get 80%, 88% more engagement. That is to say, people are more apt to like, share, comment on a post, especially if you invite them to do that. Be sure to like and share, right? Include that text. You'll be surprised how many characters 80 characters actually is. Just saying. But also be sure to include an image or a video. If you're using a video, make sure closed captioning is turned on. One of the examples that I have is, let me pull it up, is actually my Facebook feed, but I've got the page open. This is our daily video from that I do, Pastor John and I do every day for scriptures. And from a content perspective, and you'll see that it's playing in the background here. Oh, of course, now it breaks. Sorry, we're having trouble. But you got to close caption these, because people are more apt to not have the sound turned on their device by default. So having the closed captioning turned on, people are 300% more likely to sit and dwell. And that's not a fake statistic. That's a real statistic. They are 300% more likely to sit and read what you're saying than they are to scroll on by if you don't have the closed captioning turned on. And, and that's same. I'm in my church. That's my church office there in the background in the video. But what you'll see is I've got it auto captions these for me when I upload them. So, this is a simple piece of communication. Now, we post this on our social media for the church. This goes out by email to people that have subscribed to the daily video. And the cool part is I don't have to invent this content. The source for this content is literally the verse of the day from the YouVersion Bible app. I don't have to like create a whole content calendar for myself in this case and go, boy, what verse do I want to cover today? All I do is literally, I have a spreadsheet that you can download from the YouVersion folks that gives you all of the scriptures for a year. And in fact, let me pull this over here. Let me see, verse of the day. Yeah. So from that spreadsheet, you'll literally see here's the date, here's the verse and the verse info. And then I take that into, I film the video of me reading it, right? And I pull it over to my video editing software, and I have a template set up where I can just plug in the verse and the text. And all of the other stuff is just there. And I just have to shift some things around timing wise. And then I cut the video. I'm usually done with these on a Sunday afternoon after church inside of about 45 minutes. And I've got them all done for the 6 days of the week. I don't do one for Sundays because we're here. Right. But I mean, this is the content calendar, and it literally is off of a free spreadsheet that you can get from the YouVersion folks, and download the whole year all at once. And the other thing too is if you want to set these up in advance, they have the whole year and they have all the images already pre-designed for the whole year. So literally you can see all of those pretty pictures that they do with the scripture on them. So if you didn't want to create a video, you can literally just share the daily scripture as social media content and maybe share a brief thought. The other thing that I do with these videos is as I get to the end, I will invite people to share an experience of theirs personally in the comments, and share an experience of my own in the as part of the video in relation to that. And so and thank you for liking the page, y'all. I appreciate that. I'm seeing those notifications coming up while I'm sitting here. I get that, like, we'll get a personal experience from me, and then I invite people to share theirs in the comments. And then I ask people directly, please like and share the videos so that other people can come to know God the way that we do, right? It's a personal invitation. And what we end up getting, this just got posted, but usually we get a few likes. Sometimes we'll get comments, I'll get more. We also live stream like a Bible study every Thursday morning. That's a retired elder that's part of our congregation. He does a Bible study every Thursday. This is what, this is how we structure our content so that people are, and Pastor John has been out. Otherwise he'd be on this too. There's videos with him, but he's been out for the last little bit. His wife has been having surgery and whatnot, but we also, live stream the services. So we get interaction there. And I ask people at the beginning of the services to be involved from home, like comment and, like and share the video from home. So we get, oh yeah, sorry. We're looking for a new worship director right now. I am kind of in all the roles right now. And I made a comment earlier about like being all things to all people. And I'm kind of doing that right now. It's a little crazy, but anyway, so that's what we've got going on. And from a content perspective, it's easy content. It's a short hit. It's an easy win, right? You don't want to have to do a ton of work. And so that's the goal here, is we don't want to do a ton of work. And so we do that as easily as we can. So what we do though is we make sure that the videos are ADA friendly by having the closed captioning turned on, but that also increases the engagement rates of the videos and the dwell times, how long people will watch them. And then if you're building ads, you should have a headline of no more than 5 words. Your ad content itself should be no more than 14 words in length. You'll notice that that's about the same character count as this. And then have a description that's no more than 18 words. And that's for Facebook. Okay. We're going to look at other platforms here too. And this is based on information off of Sprout Social, which is a social media management tool. This is an article that they wrote on what they found to be from studies to be the most engaging character count lengths for content, right? So, and honestly, remember, you can use these channels like Facebook as a strategy, as a tactic to get people to go to your website where they can learn more, engage, and get more involved. Let's talk about Instagram. Instagram's another one. It's a younger demographic than Facebook. Usually 35 and under. Instagram is the, there are exceptions to the rule. I'm one of them. I'm in my mid 40s. So like, I'm on Instagram, but maybe it's because I've worked in marketing for the last 10 years and it's like, I do all digital marketing. So I'm there. I don't know. But what I do know is that based on what I see, posts should be about double what they are on Facebook. There's a little more reading involved here that goes along with the picture. The image should be close cropped, dynamic, but not over filtered, right? Like you don't want to overdo it with all the filters and everything. Now, here's the interesting thing with Instagram. You can hashtag all your posts. Well, hashtagging helps expand the conversation. One of the hashtags I will always use is West Hempfield Township, Pennsylvania. West Hempfield, I'll use Lancaster County because I want to call out the fact that it's a local post, like it's about the community. We did this with our youth the other week. We were doing, you may or may not have heard of the game called Among Us, and it's a little mobile game that you can play, but it's a fun little game, and it's the most basic game imaginable, but it's fun to play. I did a post on Instagram live from there, and I got, I think, 4 times the engagement on that post about us playing a live version of Among Us at youth than I had on like one of our worship services. And it made me feel really dumb because like I want our worship services to be awesome, but because I hashtagged it as Among Us and Lancaster County and local and like youth group and like all these hashtags, we got way more engagement on that post because I was. And the other thing too is with hashtags, you want to make sure that you're researching the hashtag. Before you use it, look it up. Make sure you're not getting into a conversation that you don't want to be in. You can end up hijacking a hashtag. For example, I had a client years ago work in metal as a product. We hashtagged something as metal and didn't research it on a post. And well, it turns out it was used primarily for heavy metal, like the music. And so we were interjecting our architectural metal stuff into a conversation accidentally about heavy metal music. And it went about as well as you could expect. The metal community did not really take kindly to us getting in there. And we got all kinds of comments that we're like, whoops, hey, we took a step back out of that conversation, got rid of that post. But ad content, if you're going to advertise on Instagram, 125 character count. As I said, I'll get to questions at the end. I see people are chatting questions through, and I want to try and get through this because we are starting to run low on time a little bit. YouTube. Yes, you want to be on YouTube. You want to be sharing videos on YouTube. All of your videos should have descriptions, and the descriptions should be descriptive and include a link over to your church webpage. And here's why. YouTube is literally the second largest search engine on earth. Google has, I think, about 85% of the market share. After people use Google, a lot of times they'll use YouTube as a search engine to find, like, how often do you DIY a project? For me, it's like, how do you change brakes on a 2010 Chevy Suburban? Right? I want to know that because I'm going to go change my brakes. And there's a video out there for it. People use YouTube as the second largest search engine in the world. If you've got videos about what's going on at your church, have them on a YouTube channel because they are searchable and they will bring more people to you. So there's that. Titles, 60 characters max. And why? Because if somebody looks at it on their phone or on a mobile device like a Roku or their smart TV, that title gets truncated if you're over 60 characters. Studies show people are like 40% more likely to click on something if they can see the whole title. So if you got that ellipses at the end, they're less likely to click on it because it's shortening the title and they don't know what they're actually going to see. If they can see the whole title, if they can see the whole link, they're more likely to click on it. It's crazy, but it's true. And then your description on there should be no more than 250 words. And you want to use things like church in Lancaster, PA, church in Philadelphia, PA, church near Eddystone, PA, right? Like you want to be talking about that because those search terms are search terms that people will use to find a church in their community. And so you want to be talking about that, not only on YouTube, but also on your website. And in your Facebook descriptions for your pages, for your Facebook pages. That stuff is indexed and searchable and Google uses it. So if somebody's searching for a church in the area, make sure you show up. And we talked about some of the tools for how to do that additionally with Google in the first session. So content strategy. Your content should always be like a 3-point message. And for the pastors out there, you know what I'm talking about. We're taught to frame up our messages with a simple idea, tell them what the idea is, and then tell them what to do with the idea. What's the practical application? Well, we want to do the same thing with our communication. Here's what's happening. Here are some of the details about what's happening. Here's how you can be involved. And so you structure your content around that idea. And it should always be with the idea of how the user's action is going to get them involved. That should always be the core concept behind your communication, because that's, unless it's a special announcement that's just like church wide, you always want to have an action for them. And here's how you can be part of it. That invitation, it comes back to that being invitational. You don't have to do that with every single post, but when you're looking at email or social media, yes, these are 100% the places that you want to be doing that. You can think of this in that very Wesleyan idea of the porch and the doorway, in terms of how John Wesley describes salvation. Where like salvation, like there's this moment of salvation where you're standing on the porch and then you go through the door, and that's the justification moment where you move into salvation. We can treat our content and our communications that same way, where we've got the people on the porch, we just want them to walk through the door. And so we want the rest of the content can be behind that gate, can be behind that door. Come on in, learn more, get this, get that, take this free stuff, apply now. Like, you want to get them there. And then what's behind it can be your bigger 3-point message. Blogs can be a good idea. I use the daily videos as an example. I mean, coming up with ideas for things like daily devotionals and blog content, or even weekly content, weekly devotionals or newsletters, some of this stuff can be a challenge. And so finding a source for inspiration, but there's things out there that you can use. Literally, I talked about the YouVersion, and that's what we use for our videos. I mean, I don't have to do any invention there except for like kind of expounding on the concept of the scripture for a minute or two. And then it's like, then it's written itself pretty much. Additionally, there's not only the weekly lectionary that we use for our services, but there's also a daily lectionary too. I mean, there's what is it? The Daily Bread devotional that they hand out for free everywhere. There's readers. There's all kinds of like little paper handouts. But you can go out there. Ministry Matters is another one where it's a UMC publication where you can get some inspiration from articles there. But as part of each type of content, we want to invite the users to do something. The videos, for example, I mentioned, I ask them to comment, share an experience, like and share so other people can get to know it. I want them to be able to take an action. And then I also remind them to share it, because the engagement goes up when they do. And we get a fair number of shares. What are your goals? This is really what it comes down to, is what do you want people to do? Make sure you have a goal in mind. Establish a goal for the content. When they read the email, I want my church member to do what? Right? What do I want them to do as a result of this email? When they read this devotional or watch this video, I want them to do what? Fill in the blank, right? And if you want to know how well it's working, incorporate tools that can help you measure how it's performing, right? So goals or events in Google Analytics, that's the thing. Like, you can actually have it track what people are doing, and then you can go back and report on that and see that information later. How well am I doing with this? Facebook has insights that they have as part of the page. And then you also have conversion tracking as part of Facebook and Google Ads that can give you some good insight into like how people are taking action with the ads and what they're doing there. So yeah, and then looking at that data and making sure that you understand like how people are interacting is where it's at. And so we're drawn to a close here. So I want to open this up to Q&A. We did have some questions and comments come through. Sorry, I just saw the one that said SPF records are one of the results of the fall. I would completely agree. They're a pain in the backside. Love the Bible app, video editing software. So I have a free package that I use, a free video editing software called DaVinci Resolve. There is a pro version that you can pay for, but man, I will tell you, the free version is super, super powerful. And it blows it blows iMovie out of the water. It's available for PC and Mac. I use it all the time. You can set up project templates, and I can cut. Usually, I can film and cut 6 videos for my the videos that we use. I have a template for me, and I have a template for Pastor John, and then I switch back and forth when I'm cutting the videos. And usually, I can have them all done inside of an hour. for the week. And so it's a minimal time commitment for me there. And that includes me shooting my videos for the week and then rendering them out. So DaVinci Resolve is the name of that software, and it's free. Somebody commented and said, Carolyn commented and said, lots of our younger attendees are only on Instagram and not on Facebook. 100%. That is true. And that's why I advertise and use both. When we're posting, if we're targeting our youth group members, or like we share that on Instagram. In fact, we have somebody who's a student in our local high school. They have an internship program. She just came on board 5 hours a week as an intern with our youth group. And she's handling social media posts for the next year, and she has to do this as part of her school project, actually. So it kind of worked out. We have somebody generating social media content for our youth program. I didn't mention a print medium. You're absolutely right. I didn't. Print is, I won't say print is dead. I used to work for Xerox. I'd be like doing self-harm if I said that print was dead. But print is really only effective generationally. There are people who do not typically read a lot of mail. And so print is not the most effective medium. We still use it for certain things. But it's like very judiciously will I go and I'll pay for a print ad. Basically, return on print ads is like non-existent. Whereas, I can say if I send out a postcard mailer, for example, if I send out 10,000 postcards to a zip code, I can expect a 0.1% response on that. Now you do the math. 10,000 mailers, maybe 100 people. And if I get 100 people that show up, I lose 50% of them after the first week. And then another 20% of them after that. I might be down to like 10, 15 people at the end result of a mailer that I might spend a whole lot of money designing and sending and mailing, where I can spend $25 on a Facebook ad for 2 weeks and reach 10,000 people and have a much higher return because for my dollar. And I might spend several $100s on that newspaper ad, or it's crazy. So I do use print, but I use print sparingly. Right now, we're not even doing church bulletins. So, that's, yeah. And so, yeah. And then somebody said that they find YouTube videos from Black Bar to be very helpful. Thank you for that. Now, I do want to invite you at this time, if you want to unmute and ask me some questions rather than just using the chat, let's do that. And then I just want to be respectful of your time. So go ahead and unmute if you got questions. If you can, please. If you can't, let me know. You should be able to.
Yeah,
I hear people now.
I have 2 questions real quick. Maybe
Okay.
I missed it, but do you have suggestions for movie editing software, and also any suggestions on, like, if we were to design our own website, do you have any resources that you would suggest for that?
Okay, I covered the video stuff. I use DaVinci Resolve to do my video editing. It's fantastic video editing software. It's free. There's audio and color adjustment tools in there. I mean, like, it's super, super powerful. Like, it is really, really good. Tons of transitions in there. You can really do nice stuff with it. I use simple crossfades, and it makes me happy. And I'm not doing like the Homer Simpson star wipe on everything. But yes, DaVinci Resolve is the name, and you spelled it correctly. Well, I think it's D-A Vinci, but I might be wrong. But if you look that up, you'll find it, and it is great. It's a big download, but it is very powerful software, and it's free. So there's that. As far as websites, in my first session, I talked about the importance of making sure that you've got like good hosting, rather than like finding that our typical response is to find like the cheapest hosting we can find and like save money in all the ways. Don't do that. Don't do that. Cheap hosting is the bane of my existence. I mean, and when I encounter a client that's got like the $5 a month hosting from GoDaddy, I take a moment, collect myself, and then come back to the conversation. Cheap hosting will just undermine your website from the get-go. It performs poorly. It's slow. You share a server with 10,000 other websites. You fight for resources. It's bad. Get good hosting. And good hosting can cost $300-400 a year. It doesn't have to be super crazy expensive. But I mean, you can get your own VPS server, and that's a term you can go look up. Virtual private server from SiteGround is actually what we use as well. Carolyn, thank you for sharing that. For our church website, we use SiteGround, and it's actually really solid. It works pretty quickly. For my personal business, my personal marketing agency, I have my own VPS server where people pay to host with me. And that's and then the other agency that I part-time with, we use WP Engine, which tends to be a little bit more on the more expensive side, but they offer a lot of services that are great. And those are good hosting platforms, and I wouldn't be afraid to go to them. In terms of what I'm running, WP Engine is obviously WordPress focused, but WordPress would be the content management system that I would focus on using. Yeah, I would absolutely look at WordPress, and then there are themes out there that you can use, but I would be so John, yes, great question about using template-based sites like Wix. They have gotten much better than they used to be, but one of the things that I've found is that you're still sharing resources with everybody else, and they're a lot harder to optimize for SEO. One of the things that I can work with a client on a website, and it could be 10,000 pages on a website. If it's built on WordPress, now I'd shudder a little bit if a client brought me a 10,000 page WordPress website. I mean, I'd be a little nervous about that, but like there's better platforms for that large of a site. But even a site that's 70, 80 pages, if it's inside of WordPress, because of the plugins that are available for WordPress that aren't available on platforms like Wix, I can optimize without paying for them. Because that's the other thing with Wix, is it's a little bit sneaky. They get you in there for free, but then if you want to do anything advanced like contact forms or email newsletter signups, they want you to use their tools, and then they charge for them. And so they start nickel and diming you on how to use this feature or use that feature, where WordPress has 40-50,000 free plugins. All of them are community rated, and you can go in and see how often they're updated. For them to be a certified plugin, they have to be secure. So there's a lot of community policing that comes in with the WordPress platform that makes it something that I feel to be very reliable. But if you're going to build a WordPress website, you do want to make sure that you're looking at website security as a thing. Definitely get some security plugins for WordPress, at least one. There are plugins that do multiple things. And I can include some of those in some documentation that I'll provide after the meeting today, as far as that, since it came up. But yeah, I would look at WordPress as the platform and themes. Size of the communication team at Hemfield, that's a great question. It's 3 of us. I have Deb Souders, who handles all of our print. She handles all of my print media, the bulletin, a lot of email communication. She also does a lot of my event publication stuff. So when we were still using the lobby more, we had posters everywhere. Deb was the one that does all the posters. She does all my pre-worship slides that communicate like event information. So like she does a lot of my graphic design and print pieces. And then my buddy Steve, who is also our tech person in terms of our audio and live streaming our stuff. Steve does a lot of my email communication. And we work together as a team to produce all the content. So I'll send them a framework and I'll let them flesh out the content when they write it. But those communication plans that I shared in the first meeting really are what drives the content. And just to give you an example of what that looks like, where's my sharing bar? There we are. We have, let's see, screen 2, there it goes. So I have a communication plan that we use anytime we're going to do any kind of event for the church. This is a form that gets filled out on our website, and it turns into this PDF file, and this is what powers our events. So all of the questions are in here. Do I need a room reserved? Is it open to the public? Are we offering childcare? Do I have to sign up for it? Where do the responses go? Like, so if somebody registers, who's the one managing the event? Is there a deadline for registration, a cost? And so we build all of this stuff based on, do we need to have a bulletin insert? So like all of this stuff drives all of our communication. So these plans are kind of really what will help keep your communication direct, pointed, complete. If you follow a communication plan like this, 9 times out of 10, you will not have people come back to you with questions, because all of the questions will be answered, right? And then ultimately, you also know what the goal is. A lot of times the people filling these out are also going to tell me, like, here's the description. And in fact, here's a page that you can go to on the website that has more info. And so, like, that's where all the stuff links to. And then we have a registration form there for the class. So that's how we use a communication plan. This communication plan, standard and available. Yes, this isn't really standard. This is something that we've developed. Deb, my one of my communications people, was the one is, the other's part-time. Deb is part-time, Steve is full-time, because he handles other things than just communication. But they are paid staff on the church staff. So yeah, but Deb used to be the communications director for local university, Franklin and Marshall. So she was, she handled all their communications for a long time. And so some of this is driven by her experience as far as, and then of course, yeah, UMCOM. Thank you, John. They are an extremely helpful service of the United Methodist Church. And so you should absolutely take a look at that link that just went in the chat there from John Coleman. Thank you, sir. Were there any other questions that anybody had?
I have a question.
Sure.
This is Carolyn from Conshohocken United Methodist, and I am kind of the volunteer marketing person, social media person. And my question is, how do you engage your pastor to collaborate with you on social media?
Well, that's easy for me because I am the pastor, one of the pastors. So, but if I were, you have to, I mean, that is a tough one. You have to have a pastor that that is willing to do that, put in the work. So if you were looking to get the pastor to do things like a daily video or even a weekly video, really it's going to come down to selling them on the idea.
But even things like, hey, I know you're planning your sermons for the next month. Like, can you give me a little bit more than just your sermon title? Like, could I, how do you ask them those things that you're not just going to get a blanket response?
Right. And that's okay. Another great question. So that would be what we have done here at Hemfield. And I'm going to share a little bit of the black magic that we have behind the scenes. If I can get it to load. There we go. What it comes down to, I think, is also partly the organizational level of the pastor. And I'll own the fact that in the past, as a pastor, I had to plan a service once a week. And the only person that needed to know about it was my church secretary, because I sent her the worship order for the service, and it had the prayers and the responses and everything in it. And so that was it. That was like the level of involvement in church planning. Whereas where I'm at now, it's an entirely different story, because I've got so many people involved in the process. And this is something that you might consider, and I'm about to share my screen here. So I'm stalling as I as I move things around and I pull this up. But a little bit of the black magic behind the scenes here is that this is something that Pastor John and I do, and we have a couple other people that read this. And essentially, it is a sermon planning document where we can go in and we put in thematic information. And this actually goes back, if I unhide here. Yeah, I love sheets. Where's it at? I want to unhide my columns, but I can't right now because I'm just forgetting at the moment how to do that.
Is it under view?
Yeah, I looked, but
are you maybe not?
It hidden sheets.
Oh, there you go.
All right, doesn't matter. There's columns back to the beginning of the year, but basically what you would see in here is there's a main idea in for most of the messages. There's an action, or the what's our final point for the message, like what do we want the takeaway to be. We also have tied this into our children's program in the past and pulled in information from our children's program as far as what the kids are studying right now as part of their curriculum. Also what we're tying it into the weekly Bible study with the pastors, as well as our church-wide daily devotions. So we do pull all of this together thematically, so that that stuff is available. But we've gotten into the habit of doing it because we've built a culture of communication. So it's something that we've been focused on here at the church for some time. So, I can't take credit for this. This was a culture that was already here when I started here. So I just kind of stepped into it. We've made minor changes, but for the most part, this is stuff that has been going on. So it really is a matter of developing a culture of wanting to communicate and making those details available. The hard sell there in that regard, and I'll say this as a pastor, is going to be getting the pastor to plan ahead beyond that week. Because like when I was working 12 hours a week as a part-time pastor at my previous church, that 12 hours a week, a lot of that was spent writing the sermon, and a good chunk of that was spent fishing through the hymnal to find my hymns and doing all the responsives and the prayers and everything. I would spend lots of time on that. And then if I had any committee meetings or anything, like my 12 hours was pretty much spent. I know that I routinely put in 20 to 30 hours a week there anyway, but I got paid for 12, right? So like, that's how it usually goes. There's no such thing as part-time ministry, is what they say. So getting the pastor on board will be 100% your toughest challenge, but work with them to establish a calendar like this. And if they're willing, hopefully they are, you should be able to get, you should be able to get some more thematic ideas out of them, at least. I know my buddy Chris, Chris Eden, who's the pastor now at Long Memorial United Methodist in Southern Lancaster County. One of the things when he was at his previous appointment, he would sit down with the planning team, and they would literally on a big scroll of paper run it across the room and map out the whole year thematically and start there. And so it's really just kind of like putting that. I talked about developing a content calendar in the earlier session. Developing a content calendar is a huge piece of this. That's what this is on the screen, is a content calendar for the sermons. But we use this.
This is helpful.
Yeah. So yeah, that's how I would view that as a content calendar. So yeah. I hope that helps. I don't unfortunately have any like super secret tricks to like get a pastor to want to play ball. It's tough to get our time and attention. I know that. But I appreciate the challenge because I've been on both sides of that.
I have a question.
Sure.
If we do a lot of small communications things, or our church uses Servant Keeper for some things, and we're trying to learn how to use it better. But if we were advertising for a new church secretary, what are the key minimal requirements that we should look for in bringing someone in that therefore then might be able to move forward on this stuff? And
right. So I'd be looking for somebody that knows how to use and understands working with at least Office, modern Office software like, Microsoft Office package, or at least Google Suite. Beyond that, I would look for somebody that has editing experience with websites, has updated content on websites. After that, experience posting on social media on behalf of organizations, not personally. That would be something that I would expect to be a skill, would be posting on behalf of organizations and writing on behalf of organizations, because that's going to be a key skill. So you won't necessarily, and as long as I would put it in terms of communicating on behalf of organizations rather than necessarily posting on social media,
right?
Because, that would be a little more open than say, and I would though include, is practiced in the use of certain social media platforms, i.e. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, perhaps, so that there's at least a level of understanding on how to use those platforms. Because learning how to post on behalf of an organization is actually relatively easy, given that it's not very different from posting on behalf of yourself. It's just you do it in a different spot within those platforms. So, or you sign in on a different account. The key thing there is you want to make sure that you have somebody who understands what it means to post for an organization, and that they're not writing for themselves, they're writing for someone else and sharing for someone else, so that there's a level of understanding and responsibility there that's tied to that role. Those would be key things that I would look for.
Thank you very much.
And then I would post those not in the local paper, but I would make sure that I'm using something like Indeed or advertising it as a job posting within the church's Facebook page or on the website. And you'll be limited at that point to people that are on digital platforms already and are going to be more apt to find that posting, because if it's also about where you post it. If you're sending it out in a newsletter, the paper newsletter, you're going to get a whole different crew of people applying for that job than if you're sending it out on Indeed. Or there's also there are also websites specifically for posting church jobs. I'm trying to think of a couple of them, but they've certainly been hitting me up because we've been looking for a new director of worship here. I've been footing the bill on that one for the last few weeks, as we're about to hire somebody, but church staffing, thank you, is one of them. But I was getting emails literally from hey, I'm so-and-so from this platform. I saw your posting over here on Indeed, and I wanted to tell you about our platform. So there are tons of them out there that are perfect for that.
Okay,
also, consider other sources. Somebody posted here about using Patch. The other you can use is Nextdoor. I actually do quite a bit of posting about stuff from the church and interact with my community on Nextdoor quite a bit. I've actually been able to see and meet some needs. And yes, I would consider an on-site shadow if you wanted to come hang out here for a week. That'd be fine. I'm totally down with that. You get to see all the boring stuff that I do. Because most of it's administrative. All the big stuff happens on Sundays. Amen. But yeah, you'd be welcome to come down and we can schedule a time. You could come in and hang out. I've got no issues with that. Yeah. But yeah, beyond that, yeah. Any other questions? Got to watch our time here. It's almost noon. So no other questions. I just want to be sure. Is this the second time once and for all here? All right. I'm going to take that as a no, and I want to thank everybody for their time. I really appreciate you joining the session today. It was great to have you, and you will see resources coming. The recording will be up on the website, and I'll be making resources available as well. The presentations, as well as some other documents, such as content strategies and the content plan, as far as the communication plans. All that stuff will be made available, so you'll have all that stuff to take a look at. I'll be dropping that all in the Google Drive folder and then sharing a link to that, so you'll have access to everything. So that'll be forthcoming as well. I hope to have all that up by Tuesday. The recordings will be available by Tuesday. I hope to have all of my stuff ready by Tuesday as well. So there will be a document that'll have links to useful tools for all the different things that we talked about. So yeah. I guess that's about it. I also will be including, I mentioned this, I think, in the first session, a content writing template for blog posts that I developed a couple years ago for a format that Google really likes in terms of how to write content for a website and break that content up. So it's easier for people to parse and read on mobile devices, as well as just kind of how people read anymore. Headline paragraph, short paragraph, and having multiple of those inside with bulleted lists and that kind of stuff. Google loves that, and people engage with that kind of content a lot more readily than they do long form, novel-esque content than they used to. So if you I'll message out to everyone here my email address here at the church. Of course, you can reach me through the website, as I always say com, but it's org. You can reach me through the church website as well. I have a contact form on my profile, but feel free to reach out if you have any questions to think of later, or if there's something that I don't catch in the content that I share later this week. But once again, thank you. I really appreciate you coming. I certainly wasn't expecting to have 35, 40 people per session. That was pretty wild. But once again, thanks for the time, and God bless and take care. I'll talk to you all later.
Great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
God bless. Thank you.
Thank
Really
you.
good. Really great. Thank you.